Momo and Okarun, for a long time, they keep saying they're just friends, but are they really? Every jealous glance, every selfless act, every blush is screaming something different. In this video, we're going to be breaking down every hidden sign in Dandadan that proves these two are way more than friends, and by the end, you won't be able to deny it, which obviously this video will contain some spoilers for Dandadan past season 2 of the anime, but like always, we will keep it limited to only the bare minimum of what you need to know for the purposes of this video so as to not greatly impact your viewing experience. Also, if by the end you feel that there was a sign that I left off that you feel is important, state your case down in the comment section. And lastly, I'm only going up to chapter 166 of the series since as of this recording that is the most recent chapter, and by the time you guys are seeing this, season 2 will have already been underway. So jumping right in, here are every sign that Momo and Okarun are in love. In chapter 1, the first sign doesn't necessarily come from either of the characters themselves, but instead it's an observation by Momo's friends who take note of her behavior around Okarun, noting that she switched up and gone for the geek type instead of how she normally dates guys and how it makes her look. While it's easy to say that they're misreading the situation because these two are in an argument, they are her close friends and they know her well enough to pick up on the difference between Momo when she's annoyed and Momo when she's acting differently. Our first sign that they noticed she cared for him even before Momo herself knew it. Later on in the same chapter, Momo tells the story of how a boy that she liked once made fun of her grandmother, and she opened up to Okarun about her family life and her reasoning for believing in spirits, which shows a growing level of comfort for someone that she literally just got on speaking terms with, which further backs up her friend's observation that she was into Okarun more than she realized. Later on in that chapter, Okarun shows up right when Momo is pinned down on the table about to be used in the most heinous way possible. She thinks to herself how she managed to maintain her chastity and her purity for the Kentakura who she's been waiting on, and that's when Okarun shows up as her knight in shining armor to stop her from having her virginity stolen, just like how a knight is protecting the honor of the princess he's sworn to protect. Also, when Momo hears how Okarun spoke about her, how she stood up for him being the first person to ever do it, and he offered to give up his reproductive organs to save Momo, Momo's eyes, they tell the story. His selfless sacrifice, it didn't go unnoticed. It moves something deep inside of her. We also see her realize her heart is beating and it's racing as she's around him right before he reveals his name is Kentakura, the same name of her obsession, and the blush on her face betrays her in that moment. In chapter 2, Momo looks sad when Okarun makes the assumption that she'll go back to ignoring him and goes out of her way to boost his confidence before trying to bond with them, talking about the paranormal stuff. We later see her again get flustered and blushing when Okarun is in his transformed state, and he drops a line about how he's an awkward fellow. The first of many times we'll see this reaction out of her. Also, during this part of the story, Momo has to continuously suppress the power inside of Okarun, otherwise he takes on a beastly appearance, and that is a clear nod to the Beauty and the Beast trope in the story, but it has a twist added to it. In chapter 3, when Momo wakes up, her first thoughts are Okarun, showing how deeply she's begun to care for him, and when she thinks he's in danger, she tells her grandmother that if anything happened to him, she'd never forgive her, showing how deeply she's begun to care about him in a short period of time. This is built on when she begins to blush as she sees him, and the blush deepens when she calls him annoying, and just like with her friends, her grandmother realizes that Momo is attracted to him outright, asking if he's her type now. Though despite her saying no, it's obvious this is a deflection by her, or her not being aware of how she feels yet, or just trying to ignore it. Her grandmother teases her again by saying that Momo has confessed her love. While it's more humor than anything else, Momo is already starting to associate subconsciously the name Kentakura, not just with the actor, but with Okarun himself. In chapter 4, when they're running through the house, when Momo hears her grandmother call Okarun by the name Kentakura, she falls forward in the gag scene, but notice in the panel of the manga, there's a giant heart there. It is subtle, but it is the story planting seeds for the eventual romance. In chapter 8, we see how quickly Momo shifted from the finality of goodbye to telling him that she'd see him tomorrow, right as he himself was beginning to look sad. since now that he'd gotten his slong back, in theory, their time together would be be over with their just having beaten Turbo Granny, and we see right after this that Okarun is trying to think of ways to speak to Momo the next day, where she's been waiting for him, playing with her hair before playfully nudging him in the shoulder and blushing right after this. While you could argue, hey, this is just a sign of open friendship, Momo playing with her hair, having gotten there early, the blushing in context could be argued as her testing his comfort level with physical contact. But as we'll see later, Momo does get more touchy with Okarun in the series than with other characters, and even if it's subconscious, their attraction is building. The fidgeting with the hair is also another classic sign of attraction done on a subconscious level. In chapter 9, we see both of them thinking about each other, with Momo's friends taking note of the fact that she's completely spaced out, acting lovesick, but they incorrectly think it's about her ex when in reality it's Okarun. And this is huge since their first thoughts were romantic issues and it being her ex, which means people who know her very well are already seeing the impact that he's made on her. The angst that you see with these two is a very clever parallel. The untrained eye would view it as lovesick, but they both want to talk about their shared love for the paranormal things, yet the poses are consistent with what you see in classic romance stories where the male and female character are lovesick. Both of them jump to the incorrect conclusion that the other doesn't want to spend time with them, on top of the homage to the missed connection trope where they just barely miss each other in crowds before they eventually find one another, which leads to the accidental kiss. This coupled with her friends accusing them of kissing and Momo's reaction to Okarun seemingly rejecting her, and then the back and forth name calling, as you would expect, it stuns her friends who are already having the gossip wheels turning, because due to Momo's tsundere personality at this point in the story, they've already come to the conclusion that she likes the guy, and both of them are blushing while they're calling each other names. In chapter 10, we see Momo embarrassed as everyone grills her about the kiss and getting flustered about the boyfriend line, but her friends are teasing her about her feelings. It goes back to the same thing with her grandmother. The people who know her best see that Momo is falling for Okarun, even if she doesn't realize it. Later on, Momo looks both shocked and hurt when she sees Okarun walking with Aira, who is playing a cruel joke on him, which causes her to stand up for him by using her powers on Aira, and then she wraps her arm around him, blushing, going out of her way to make sure Aira sees them together, which is important in context because Aira specifically stated that Okarun would never be touched by another girl as fine as her, which Momo goes out of her way to do this. It implies that she sees herself as equally attractive and jealous because Aira said that Okarun had the hots for her. It's almost like a staking of the territory type claim. In chapter 12, when Okarun hears one of the boys say that Momo's cute, he begins blushing and comes to the realization, hey, she really is cute. And then as a callback to chapter 1, he stands up for her honor when he hears someone question her purity, once again putting him in the knight in shiner armor mode. Just like in chapter 1, he's in his transformed state, whereas in chapter 1 he was physically protecting her honor, and in this chapter he's protecting her honor by standing up for her against slander. Later on, when he bumps into Momo again, he begins blushing as he looks at her, thinking about how she's super cute, and then verbally calls her cute, which leads to a funny chase scene in the hallway, and Momo later on being teased about Okarun being her boyfriend before she learns that Okarun stood up for her honor, and she begins blushing hard. In chapter 18, we see Momo getting depressed about Okarun skipping lunch, and this time when she's asked by her friends if another woman is behind it, she sticks up for him being loyal before she thinks about Aira. But the way everything is set up, you gloss over the fact that it's asking if another woman is basically doublespeak for is he seeing another girl romantically, which makes the moment where she looks shocked and hurt upon seeing him on top of Aira add on to it. She is jealous, but why would you be jealous over a friend? You wouldn't be jealous unless you like that friend. In chapter 19, Okarun makes it a point to train to get stronger so that he doesn't put Momo in danger, showing that he cares for her enough to want to be strong enough for her to not have to fight for him and do the heavy lifting. This makes Momo's jealousy hit harder because he had honorable intentions, but Momo hasn't had the best of luck with guys, and she clearly thought Okarun was just like her ex in chapter 1 of the manga, and we see Momo slam her head against the desk in depression. In chapter 21, we get confirmation about Momo's subconscious feelings because she scolds him, saying he's getting what he deserved for flirting with the dumb skank, the key word there being flirting. Also, for her to call Ira a skank after having just seen her backstory not that long ago, it is a sign of how hurt she was. Again, if you don't have feelings for someone, why would you care if they are flirting or not? This is more than just being told that he was working on a report. Instead, this is pure jealousy on display, which in the following chapter, we see Ira tease Momo about being jealous when she tells them to not fight so close together, and Momo defensively pushes back. But again, it's another sign of dormant feelings bubbling up because she doesn't realize they're forming right now. In chapter 23, Momo's jealousy continues even after Okarun explains to her that he and Ira were not being, quote, lovey-dovey, end quote, and she continues to call him a liar, and Ira is called a skank. When Okarun grabs her hand to try to explain himself, Momo begins blushing and she can't look him in the face anymore, which leads to the underwater scene with them looking deep into each other's eyes in what is clearly a romantically inspired pose, despite them not kissing. We also see her throw insults at Ira again when she talks about being seen in her underwear by Okarun. The fact that she used verbiage like cheap, it shows more of her jealousy and the need to bring down Ira's potential value in the eyes of Okarun, as if to say she is cheap, but me, I'm the one of value. It's petty, but jealousy by nature can be argued as a petty emotion. In chapter 25, Momo is shown blushing hard after Okarun reveals that he wanted her to think that he was cool, so that's why he began working out, and Momo switches to playfully teasing him while blushing as well, and we get the ending shot where she's unable to look him in the eyes afterwards, but the close-up shot of her eye has a sheen inside of it, hinting at a budding romance. In the next chapter, we see Momo blushing when she's getting accused of being jealous over Okarun, which again, if there was nothing there, she would have zero reason to be embarrassed, but she is, because there are feelings and she's trying to figure it out herself. In chapter 26.1, we see Okarun is so attentive of Momo that he picked up on how badly she wanted a movie and he purchased the special edition of it, and we learned he went out of his way to get a job to save money for it. Gift giving is both a love language, and in this case, his attentive nature and wanting to do something for someone he cares for shows how far he's willing to go to make her happy, which leads to the playful shoulder nudge by Momo when she blushes. In chapter 28, it's Okarun's turn to get jealous of Momo. In the first few interactions where he's threatened by Gigi because of how he looks, his past relationship with Momo, and we see his insecurities begin to show themselves. In the next chapter, we see Momo and Okarun blushing as they make plans to see each other again the next day, once again being unable to look each other in the eyes. In chapter 29, we see Okarun's imagination running wild with assumptions about Momo and Gigi's relationship. Another sign of his jealousy popping up, and he worries that she has feelings for Gigi, but after trying to pass it off as worried she won't have time for him anymore, she also appears in his mind blushing, and the thought of her smiling with the blush on her face makes him blush as well. When she offers to feed him while he trains, he blushes because he's clearly associating that with an act of intimacy, which in classic romance, that is an intimate moment. In chapter 30, the story of Taro and Hana makes Okarun think back to how he first met Momo, which is a not so subtle hint towards his feelings, because in context, Taro and Hana's relationship, it is a romantic one. And Okarun's thoughts, they run to Momo, especially when Taro says that Hana is the woman he fell in love with, and we see Okarun blushing at the end of the chapter. He's clearly thinking about Momo here. In chapter 31, Taro's words, they stay in his mind, and Okarun tells himself that if he doesn't do anything, he'll regret it for the rest of his life. And he's thinking about Momo, another not so subtle hint at his feelings. After he and Gigi have a goofy standoff around Momo, the two boys who are clearly in love with the same girl by their actions, we see Okarun jump to a conclusion, worried and threatened by his assumption that Momo and Gigi would be alone in Gigi's house until Momo reveals she was going to invite him, because otherwise she would feel uneasy, showing that Momo has grown that accustomed to his presence, because Gigi is a childhood friend, so why would she feel uncomfortable? In chapter 32, Okarun is flat out shown insecure and blushing while watching Momo and Gigi. He's extremely threatened by Gigi, and he, by his own words, is now fighting to dominate the attention of Momo. In chapter 33, Okarun is shown feeling relief that Momo doesn't see how badly he sucks at soccer, which shows just how much he values her perception of him. And upon his conversation with Gigi, his intimidation when it comes to him gets to a point that he flat out says he loves and respects her, blushing as he does so, and even thinks about their accidental kiss, which makes him blush even harder. In chapter 48, we see Momo's massive relief upon seeing that Okarun is alive, despite the magma that he was buried under after she plunged forward to try to save him, and upon hearing how he never lost faith in her, Momo blushes for the first time, showing how much his words and his faith in her meant, on top of the obvious relief that, hey, the guy's not dead. When Momo hugs him, wrapping her arms around the lower part of his back / his waist, burying her face into his neck area, it's another traditionally intimate romantic pose that's being drawn for these two. Okarun is shown blushing and trying to look everywhere except at her because obvious reasons his mind has shifted towards romance. In chapter 50, we see Momo attempting to place her hand on Okarun's in a very subtle way. Both of them are blushing, but Okarun, totally not reading the room, asks, "Hey, what game are you playing?" And Momo plays dumb and laughs it off. Our clearest sign that this early on, that in short, Momo has it bad for Okarun. Now, in chapter 54, Okarun is shown blushing at the sight of Momo while she's in her maid uniform, and in the next chapter, Momo is shown blushing as he offers to be a gentleman and walk her home when she gets off work. And when she shows back up, she uses the excuse of, "Hey, it's cold outside," just to hold his hand, just like when they were in the car previously, only this time she's more confident in grabbing his hand this time around. In chapter 62, we get more awkward blushing when Momo asks if "see you tomorrow" is the only thing that he has to say to her, and she ends up getting into a scuffle with a jealous Ira, but as she watches Okarun walk away, she's once again blushing. In chapter 64, Momo blushes and avoids eye contact when she tells him, "Okarun, you're cool now," and it's because he's wondering, why did so many people openly approach me, but in the past they never did so. Now in chapter 71, Momo's face says it all, as Bamora is shown kissing Okarun. She is jealous, and this starts the beginning of her brief jealousy issues with Bamora, and in the next chapter she outright attacks her, and she gets more infuriated when she confronts Okarun about it, especially when he called Bamora pretty and at least are storming out the room. Someone who views you as a friend, they wouldn't get that upset unless there was something else there. In chapter 73, we see more of Momo's jealousy on display as they're eating with Bamora, and the hilarious tsundere and also childish antics that Momo has as she sits down next to Okarun on the opposite end of Bamora, and she later on blames Okarun for why she's ate so much, but it goes back to her being so childish during the dinner. She began to eat more when Okarun was getting food for Bamora. In chapter 76, we see more jealousy both from Ira and Momo as Bamora greets Okarun and gets into his personal space. In chapter 78, Momo is shown blushing hard when she's in bed and she thinks that it's really Okarun who's confessing his love for her from outside the window, and it's at that moment we see that she just happens to have a heart-shaped pillow on her bed. It is intentionally suggestive because of the placement by the mangaka here to subconsciously make you pay attention to Momo's heart as it's racing. Momo can't get his confession out of her head, and she says she won't be able to sleep now, and she's clearly realizing her feelings for him in the here and now, and that there's a chance he feels the same. In chapter 78, she's blushing and avoiding eye contact when she hopes against hope that Okarun was the one who came to see her because she wants the confession she heard to be real. She then gets pissed off when he says, "Hey, that wasn't me," which leads to him being oblivious to why she's upset. Momo is so caught up in what happened that later on when she's asleep on her desk, she's having a conversation with him in her dreams, outright saying that he told her that he loved her. In chapter 88, once she sees that Okarun is heavily damaged, Momo goes right after Bamora because she's super suspicious of her. She believes she's a spy. It's worth noting she saw multiple people hurt, but it was the sight of her love, Okarun, who set her off, again showing how deeply she cares for him, even more so than everyone else in that room. In chapters 92 and 93, when Okarun's spirit leaves his body and he sees Gigi holding Momo while she's asleep, the look on his face has a hint of sadness to it, another sign of the insecurity he has when it comes to Momo and Gigi. Now in chapter 111, after Okarun saves Momo, we see her blushing at the sight of him, but the pose in of itself is a classic pose where the hero saves the damsel, which is likely intentional given the context of their relationship at this point. In chapter 113, when Momo is in danger, Okarun loses it after recalling all of the memories he had of her, with the two last memories he has of her being her holding his hand and the other her blushing face, which makes him unleash his full power to save her. In the next chapter, she blushes when she sees how upset Okarun got when talking about how she almost died. In chapter 119, Momo begins blushing when her grandmother asks her about the curry that she gave to Okarun with the note that says, "Love you," which leads to her saying that Momo needs to go buy them more curry. Momo is clearly embarrassed here, and the direct cause can be linked to Okarun and the note that she left him, which makes her both worried, and Okarun is also trying to figure out if she meant "I love you" as a friend or maybe something deeper. Both of them are in clear angst over it. In the next chapter, Momo is told by the spirit that Momo's behavior towards Okarun, particularly in the way that she can't be direct with her feelings, it just outright annoys her. Another sign that other people see the way she feels about Okarun, falling in love with him, but Momo is too stubborn to admit her feelings because, again, tsundere tendencies, and she tells her to be more direct with her feelings. Momo stirred the emotions of wanting her to fall in love inside of her, which in order to stir emotions, she had to have seen that Momo was in love with Okarun. After all, to use an analogy, you can't stir a pot without a spoon. In chapter 122, Momo and Okarun begin blushing when she grabs him by the face and she squeezes his face together to do the puckering lips, and her mind immediately goes back to the letter, and his thoughts also go back to how he revealed his feelings for Momo in front of Bamora, which leads to Momo punching him in the arm before she grabs his hand and starts asking if he saw the note that she left. Things get even funnier when Okarun's heart begins beating like crazy when Momo puts her head against his chest while she's blushing upon realizing how fast his heart is beating, and when Momo misinterprets his words about why his heart's beating so fast, she throws a jealous fit and she leaves. In the next chapter, Momo is still in her feelings and the angst she has towards Okarun, and her comically kicking her legs while her face is buried in the pillow, and her thoughts turn to him saying the words "I love you," which are cut off by her own monologue internally and her grandmother, who says Okarun's back. She takes the time to fix her appearance before she goes downstairs, showing she is self-conscious of how she looks around him. In chapter 129, Momo, after Okarun tells her that he'll see her again, she's blushing while laying in the bed, and the next day during the conversation about telling him she wants him to look her in the eyes when speaking to her, they're both blushing, and she also, for a note, has her arm wrapped around his, very close into his personal space. In chapter 131, after she falls on top of him and the officer says, "Hey, this is no place for you guys to be so intimate," it leads to both of them looking away awkwardly and blushing as well. In chapter 143, we again see Momo asleep, dreaming about Okarun, again wanting him to tell her that he loves her, and she's blushing in her sleep while doing so, showing that even when he's not there, he's always on her mind, which is why in the next chapter, she gets embarrassed when Zuma asks if she slept well because she's thinking about her dream where Okarun confessed. In chapter 159, Okarun finally works up the nerve to let Momo know how he feels, telling her that while they were apart for that short period of time, it was hard on him, and he outright declares his love for her, which makes her blush, and that goofball Serpo begins asking, "Hey, how does that make you feel? My guy wants all the tea." And on top of that, Momo makes Okarun promise to confess to her properly when they both make it out the cursed trunk that she's trapped inside of, and she makes him keep repeating the promise to confess, almost as if she didn't believe it she heard herself. In chapter 164, both of them blush at the memory of Okarun wanting to confess to her properly once they both escape from the cursed trunk. In chapter 166, Momo cuts Okarun off when he's about to confess to her properly, telling him to wait until she's been returned to normal size because she's still shrank down from the after effects of the cursed trunk, and Momo treats it like they're officially dating by telling him, "Don't even think about cheating on me," before it leads to another comical scene where she's letting some of her inner tsundere tendencies out yet again. As you can see, these two are clearly in love. They're on the precipice of being in a full-blown relationship. By the time you guys are seeing this, there will have been some additional chapters, but if we're not done with the arc and Momo's not resized, I'm not going to include it in this video just because there will be some context having missed. If you enjoyed this video, click here to check out the Spy Family video where I do every sign that you're and Lloyd are in love, or click here to check out more videos from the Dandadan playlist here on the channel.